Good evening, everyone. This is Veer Maheshwar Charitable Trust Latur MS India organizing daily international webinar series. In this series, we are inviting the speakers from India and abroad. This series is running from last 5 years, and mostly women resource persons are invited as a mission of women empowerment series. In today's session, we have invited Kadambri Anand Madam, who is IBEN programming leader from Hyderabad, Telangana, India. And her topic is inquiry-based learning. We all mostly are teachers, so that this topic is very useful to us. I welcome you, ma'am, from my organization and all the participants, and also welcome all the participants. I request you, you can start your PPT and presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Kadambri, as you all know. Before starting, I would like to say, just give a brief introduction about myself. I'm an IBPYP practitioner. Like from past 10 years, I've been teaching, and I'm an IBEN program leader, where I go and take evaluations in the IB schools, and along with that, I'm an IBEN workshop leader, where I go and train the teachers. So today's topic, what I've chosen is inquiry-based learning. This is actually very close to my heart. So before we begin this session, I would ask you one simple question, or just think about it. That in your classroom, who does most of the thinking? Is that you or your students? Just you can think, and if anybody wants to say. Students. Oh, that's great. I would like to know how do you make students think?
We are putting some thought in front of them, and they explore the meaning. Usually I'm doing it for measurement of radiant heat. There is a globe thermometer. Instead of teaching them globe thermometer, I tell them, how you can measure radiant heat, and these people slowly, in a groups, they come to the same design of radiant heat, that a globe thermometer. So that is how they explore the subject, and the learning is much better than, going with a monotonous way.
Absolutely. Thank you. That is wonderful to hear that, we have teachers already following some kind of inquiry-based learning here. And this is what exactly we are going to talk about today. Yes. So it's really great to see that we have teachers who are already doing it. However, if we talk about traditional schooling, this is not the scenario. So most of the time as teachers, we do the explaining, we do the talking, we do the thinking. Students are just the passive listeners. I'm not saying everybody does that, but definitely this is the traditional scenario that is followed mostly in our schools. But today we'll explore this method where this pattern changes. A method where students become active thinkers and learners. And this method is called inquiry-based learning. Okay. Yeah. So again, we have done this. Okay. To the next slide. Okay, so let's learn a little more about inquiry-based learning. So what is inquiry-based learning? Inquiry-based learning is a student-centered approach where learning does not start with the teacher's explanation. Instead, it begins with a question, a problem, or a situation that creates curiosity in the minds of the students. For example, you may ask just why do plants need sunlight to survive? In math, instead of giving the formula of area for just to find formula for the area, how we can ask, how can we find how much paper is needed to cover this table? In English, instead of explaining a poem, you might ask, how do you think the poet is feeling here? These questions push students to investigate and search for answers on their own. As they investigate, they start thinking deeply and discussing ideas with their classmates. Through this process, they arrive at a conclusion and learning becomes meaningful because they feel they have discovered the concept themselves. The teacher's role is to guide this journey rather than lead it from the front. So, we will just see that what is the difference between a traditional classroom versus an inquiry classroom. So here, what happens? Here we can see the difference. In a traditional setup, the teacher explains the concept in detail while students are listening. The flow of information is mostly one way. They're listening, they might ask a few questions, but ultimately, who is imparting all the information? The teacher, right? Yeah. So this generally leads to memorization rather than real understanding. But in an inquiry classroom, the teacher's role changes from explaining to questioning. Instead of giving answers, the teacher gives thought-provoking questions. Students are no longer the passive listeners. They become active explorers of knowledge. They think, discuss, test ideas, and try to make sense of the concept on their own. In traditional method, the classroom is usually quiet because students are listening again and the teacher is talking. But in the inquiry method, the classroom may be active, slightly noisy because students are discussing and engaging. That noise is actually productive learning. Traditional teaching focuses on completing the syllabus, while inquiry teaching focuses on developing understanding. When students explore, they connect learning with real life. So, this shift from passive to active learning, which makes inquiry based learning more powerful and meaningful. So, do we all agree to this that, instead of just one person who has spoken, Mr. Sorry, I'm not able to see the names. So, do we agree to this that we are generally following this approach, like, teacher is just the sage on the stage, or the students are taking the active, um, students are becoming active, the passive listeners. Do we all agree to this? This is what happens.
Ma'am, generally it happens when the teacher is like a very strict kind of. But if this teacher is like very understanding and just like have good communication or rapport with students, then it doesn't happen. It
Oh,
goes
then
well.
okay, so generally, what is your approach? I would like to know, like, how do you teach in your class?
I try to get involved my students in whatever the topic I'm teaching. So I feel happy, and even when they are answering and like when they are having some queries, it's really a happy classroom, I think.
So how do you start? Like, how do you if you have to teach a new concept? So what is the beginning point? How do you actually start?
I try to give them the background with the present knowledge, like relating things with whatever they are seeing in everyday life. So they try
Okay,
to get into that topic.
okay, nice. That's nice. So I can see that there are many thoughtful teachers here. So that is the reason I feel we all are here on this platform to learn more about new things. So yeah, so we will discuss more about the inquiry based learning. Why is it highly powerful thing? So uh, first point is like, is my screen audible? Sorry, visible? Is it clear? Okay, thank you.
Yes,
So,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Screen is
thank you. Inquiry based learning is powerful because it develops skills that go beyond textbooks. First, it builds critical thinking because students are not simply receiving information, they're analyzing, they're questioning, and reasoning. When students try to find answers on their own, their minds become active and alert. So, inquiry based learning also improves curiosity as students begin to ask more questions and show genuine interest in the topic. And another major benefit is better retention. What students discover themselves stays in their memory for much longer time than what they're told directly. So, it naturally encourages discussion in the classroom. And through discussions, students learn to express their ideas, listen to others. This sharing of ideas deepens the understanding. So, inquiry based learning also develops problem solving skills because students learn how to approach a problem, think of possible solutions, and test their ideas. Over time, students become independent learners who are confident in exploring new concepts. These are lifelong skills that help them not only in exam but in their real life as well. So this is the reason it is a highly powerful tool that if we carry in our classrooms, our teaching and learning will actually transform. So these are the steps. So now let's go into the steps like how can we actually have the inquiry based learning in our classroom. So this is a quick overview, and then we'll go in detail for each step that how actually we can do it. First, let's just glance at these steps. They look very simple, but together they create a very powerful learning process in the classroom. These steps ensure that inquiry does not become random discussion, but it remains structured and powerful. Each step has a clear role in guiding students from curiosity to understanding. The process begins with asking the right question. That is the first important point, that are we asking the right questions, which actually triggers the thinking. Then students investigate to search for possible answers using their observation, reading, or discussion. After that, they discuss their ideas with peers, which allows them to see different viewpoints. And reflection helps them process what they have learned and connect the ideas clearly. So finally, the teacher concludes the lesson by summarizing the concept in a very clear way. So we will look at each of these steps in details now to understand how actually we should go ahead with the inquiry based learning. So yes, we are showing them the real life scenarios, and definitely that is a very good thing. However, when we are doing it, are we formulating the right questions, or are we going through the right scenario? That is something as a teacher, it's a homework that we are supposed to do. So first step is ask. The first and foremost important step of inquiry based learning is asking the right questions. The success of inquiry based learning depends completely on the quality of the question we ask in the beginning. So, in many classrooms, answers are given more importance than questions. Like we all know, they have to write the right answer. But what actually it should start with is with the right question. The right question asked by the teacher. So, questions actually in an inquiry based classroom, questions are everything. A good question creates curiosity, makes students eager to find the answer on their own. As teachers, we should plan both teacher questions and also encourage student questions during lesson planning itself. So, this helps us understand students' prior knowledge, their existing ideas, and even their misconceptions. Questioning also helps in monitoring learning continuously through feedback and feed forward. So, we should expose students to different types of questions. They can be factual questions where answers can be found easily. Then we can move to conceptual questions, which are actually open ended. Then we have debatable questions that actually promote discussions and multiple ideas. Along with asking metacognitive questions like how did you figure that out or what problems did you face, help students think about their own thinking. So it's not only asking the questions and coming up to the finding out the solution. Even when the student has come up with the solution, then also it's very important to ask that okay, how do you think that this is the right solution? What made you, what kind of thinking process you've used to come to that conclusion? So you can even create a curiosity corner in the class with interesting objects that trigger questions. Uh, for example, this is the picture. So you can see, for example, if you have some something related to some unit related to inventions or something. So you can start with such kind of a picture, such kind of antique things you can bring in the class. You can just bring and keep them. So it's not that always you have to ask question. You can bring something, put it in the class, and let the student explore. When they see this, there are going to be questions in their mind. If you see the other picture here, if I see or if you see also this picture, there must be multiple questions coming into our mind. Can we say some questions that come to our mind after looking at these pictures? Do you think that these pictures are thought provoking and they make you think something? They make you ask questions. Okay, no problem. So when we this is just example. So when students see interesting objects, unusual pictures, or unfamiliar situations, their natural reaction is to ask questions. So if you're placing all old objects like lantern or rotary phone or traditional tools in the classroom, students immediately becomes curious and start asking what they are, how they were used. Similarly, when students see a thought provoking picture like this one with the soldiers, they begin to wonder about the story behind it. Who are those people? Where are they going? Why is the child there? These questions open the door to discussion, to imagination, and to deeper thinking. This is exactly what we want in an inquiry classroom, a space where questions arise naturally. Visuals, artifacts, real life situations are powerful tools to trigger curiosity. Instead of starting with explanations, we start with observation and questioning. When students ask questions on their own, learning becomes self driven and meaningful. So, our role is to actually create such moments that invite students to inquire. So these are the few examples. We can actually, when we are starting one concept, a new concept, we can just actually think of some kind of picture and bring it to the class. And then you see the reaction of the students and self-motivated questions will come up and which will actually lead to the inquiry. So what is the role of a teacher here? So in an inquiry classroom, modeling is the teacher's biggest responsibility. If we want students to ask deep and meaningful questions, we must first model how to do that. We should plan our questions in advance and think about how will it lead students to deeper thinking. Good questioning is not accidental, it is carefully designed. So we must practice asking bigger and deeper questions rather than simple factual ones. Our aim is to encourage students not only to answer our questions, but also to build new questions for them. This creates a chain of thinking in the classroom. Follow up questions are very important here. When a student answers, we should ask, why do you think so? Can you explain further? What if this changes? These follow ups push students to think critically. So this is where this Bloom's taxonomy becomes very useful. We slowly move students from remembering and understanding to applying, to analyzing, evaluating, and finally creating something. Through thoughtful questioning, we help students climb the ladder thinking step by step. So, mostly sometimes things are changing nowadays, but the focus actually mostly is on what? Remembering and understanding. And we are talking about our question papers and all. However, if you see the Bloom's taxonomy, this picture, remembering is at the bottom. Then you move to understand. Then they have to apply this their understanding. Then analyzing, then breaking their information, evaluate, and then finally they should actually create something new. So this is a very important part of the inquiry based learning. So next part, any questions or anything till now? Are we clear with that? Anybody having any doubts or any questions? Okay, so we'll move ahead. So next step after ask is to investigate. So who is going to investigate here? Students are going to investigate. Once the question has created the curiosity, the next step in inquiry-based learning is investigation. This is the stage where students actively try to find answers on their own. They observe carefully, read from different sources, perform small experiments if possible, and discuss their own ideas with peers. Learning now becomes an active process rather than a passive one. During this stage, students are not waiting for teacher to explain. Instead, they are exploring, they are thinking, they are searching for meaning. They may use textbooks, reference books, the internet, classroom materials, or simple observations from their surroundings. So the teacher's role here is very important, but very different from the traditional role. Teacher is acting as a facilitator here, moving around the classroom, guiding students gently and supporting them where they are stuck. The teacher does not give direct answers, but guiding questions that help students move forward. So this stage builds independence in learners and gives them confidence in their ability to discover knowledge on their own. This is the second step. After that, we move to the next step now, that is discuss. After investigation comes the discussion stage, which is very important part of the inquiry based learning. This is where students share what they have discovered during their exploration. Each student or group may have found something slightly different, and that is perfectly fine. In fact, different answers are welcome in an inquiry classroom. And the most important thing is that there are no right or wrong answers, because we all are in a learning process here. So when students share their finding, they learn to express their thoughts clearly. At the same time, they learn to listen the others' ideas with respect. That is the most important part. That maybe we are having different ideas, but it doesn't mean that you are wrong or I am wrong. We both may be correct. So this exchange of ideas helps them see multiple perspectives and deepen their understanding of the concept. Discussion also helps students correct their misconceptions naturally. So sometimes by listening to others, they realize where their thinking needs improvement. The classroom may become lively, slightly noisy during this stage, but this is a productive noise filled with learning. So, the teacher's role is to moderate the discussion, encourage participation, and ensure that every voice is heard. Through discussion, learning becomes shared experience rather than an individual one. And then we move to the next stage, reflection. Here we are reflecting now. So reflection is a very powerful step in the inquiry based learning, because it helps students think about their own thinking now. After investigating and discussing, students now pause and look back at what they experienced. Questions like, what did you find? What surprised you? What did you learn? They help students organize their thoughts clearly. This stage allows students to connect all the ideas they explored during the activity. They begin to understand not just the concept, but also how they arrived at the understanding. So, reflection strengthens learning because students process the information in their own words. It also gives the teacher an opportunity to understand how students are thinking and whether they have reached the right understanding. Sometimes students discover the insights that even teacher may have not expected. So, reflection builds metacognitive skills like thinking beyond thinking, where students become aware of their own learning process. This awareness makes them better learners in the long run. And then comes the final step, that is conclude. So this is the final step in the inquiry based learning to conclude the lesson. This is the stage where teacher steps in and brings all the learning together. After students have asked questions, investigated and discussed and reflected, their minds are already prepared to understand the concept clearly now. Now, the teacher summarizes the key points and connects them to the actual concept. Because students have already explored the idea themselves, this explanation becomes much easier for them to understand and to remember. The conclusion helps clear any remaining confusion and ensures that everyone is on the same page. So, this step is very important because it gives structure and clarity to the inquiry process. This also helps link students' discoveries with the curriculum content. In this way, teaching happens at the end of the process rather than right at the beginning. So, this makes learning more meaningful, more memorable, and more effective. So, a few classroom examples how we can use this in class, how inquiry based learning can be brought into every day classroom teaching in a very simple ways. So the idea is not to change the topic, but to change how we introduce the topic to students. Instead of starting with explanations, we start with situations, observations, and small challenges that make students think. For instance, you can begin a lesson by showing a real object, a short story, a map, a chart, or even current news headline and ask students what they notice. You can give them a small task to sort, to compare, to predict, or to classify before you teach the concept. You can ask them to observe patterns, find differences, suggest reasons based on what they already know. These strategies make students curious, mentally active, and right from the beginning of the lesson, they are active listeners and active participants. They begin forming ideas even before formal teaching starts. This prepares the mind to understand the concept more deeply when you finally explain it. With such simple classroom practices, inquiry based learning becomes natural and practical without requiring any extra time or any special resources. And as a teacher, there are a few fears also that we have. You know, the slides is talking about the same very genuine fears that teachers have when they hear about inquiry based learning. The first fear is that it's time consuming and that there will be not enough time to complete the syllabus. Many teachers feel that discussion and exploration may be longer than direct teaching. Then second fear is that classroom may become noisy and difficult to manage. Since students are discussing and interacting, it may feel like losing the control of the class. Another concern is syllabus pressure, where teachers worry about finishing the prescribed content on time. Teachers also fear that students may go off track and talk about unrelated things during discussions. So these concerns are very natural because we are used to the structured and teacher led classrooms. However, these fears can be addressed with proper planning and clear guidelines. Inquiry does not mean lack of control, it means guided exploration with the right questioning and time limits. So, inquiry based learning can be managed smoothly within the regular classroom time. And here are the few solutions how it can be done. So here there are a few practical solutions to common fears that we all teachers have about inquiry based learning. So first solution is to frame strong and meaningful questions. So that is our first exercise. When the question is clear and well planned, students remain focused and the discussion stays on track. The second solution is to set clear time limits for each stage of inquiry. When students know that they have limited time to investigate or discuss, they use their time more productively. This helps in managing class effectively without wasting time. So, a clear summary at the end of the lesson is very important. This brings all the ideas together and ensures that students leave the class with correct understanding of the concept. It saves time because you don't have to reteach the topic later. Finally, inquiry based learning does not have to be used for every single topic. It is most effective when used for key concepts that require deep understanding. Using it wisely makes it manageable and impactful. And how? This here we are going to talk about the most important skills in inquiry based learning, as we have discussed and said multiple times: questions, framing good questions. The type of questions we ask decides the level of thinking that will happen in the classroom. So, questions that start with why, how, what if naturally push students to think deeper and explain their ideas. Such questions cannot be answered in just one word. They require students to reason, imagine, predict, and justify their thoughts. This is exactly what we want in an inquiry classroom. On the other hand, questions that lead to one word answer, stop the thinking process very quickly. So we have to ensure that our questions are open ended questions, the questions that have multiple answers, that might have multiple answers. So when we frame questions carefully, we open the doors for discussion, exploration, and multiple viewpoints. Good questions create curiosity and keep students mentally engaged for longer time. This allows students to connect the concept to the real life situations. By simply changing the way we ask questions, we can change the entire learning experience in the classroom. And again, what is the role of a teacher here? What is our role? So, here, teacher's role in inquiry based learning, as I already said, that teacher's role is there definitely, but it's completely a changed one. It's not the one who's providing information, but the one who is acting as a facilitator. So, teacher is not just a source of information, but becomes a designer of meaningful questions. Planning good questions in advance becomes one of the most important responsibilities. The teacher also acts as a discussion manager, ensuring that students stay focused and every student gets a chance to participate. At the same time, the teacher becomes a careful listener, paying attention to students' ideas, thoughts, and misunderstanding. Instead of giving direct answers, teachers act as a guide to gently support students when they are stuck. The guidance helps students move forward without taking away the opportunity to think for themselves. So finally, teacher becomes a summarizer who brings the clarity at the end of the lesson. This new role makes teaching more thoughtful, interactive, and meaningful for both the teachers and the students. So when we are actually being part of the classroom discussions and when they're discussing, and we see that sometimes students go off track also, so what is our role there to bring them back to the track? Maybe they're into some other level, they've gone to some other direction. So when we are actually part of the discussions, we are, this is our role, that you to bring them back to something that what we want them to learn. So this is here, that is the reason we are calling the teachers facilitators here. And how is it beneficial for students? So here we are focusing on the positive impact of inquiry based learning on students. The first benefit is increased participation. Since students are involved in questioning, investigating, and discussing, they naturally becomes active in the classroom. Second benefit is better understanding. When students discover concepts on their own, they understand them more deeply compared to simply listening to explanations. This deeper understanding helps them remember the concepts for a longer time. Inquiry also improves students' confidence. As they share their ideas and see that their thoughts are valued, they become more confident in expressing themselves. They no longer hesitate to speak or ask questions. Over time, students develop a love for learning because the class becomes a place of exploration rather than memorization. These benefits not only help in academics but also building strong thinking and communication skills for life. So, here we are encouraging them and making them lifelong learners. Okay, so we have come to the final thought now. The final thought beautifully summarizes the essence of inquiry based learning. A good classroom is not judged by how much the teacher speaks, but by how much the students think. When students are thinking deeply, questioning ideas, and exploring concepts, real learning is happening. So, inquiry based learning shifts the focus from teaching to learning. It reminds us that our goal as teachers is not to deliver content, but to develop thinkers. When students think more, they understand more, they remember more, and they enjoy learning more. This approach prepares students not only for exams, but for real life problem solving and decision making. It encourages curiosity, confidence, and creativity in learners. So, as teachers, if we can create classrooms where thinking becomes a habit, we have truly succeeded. And that is the true spirit of inquiry based learning. And this is the bibliography. These are the things that I've explored while preparing this presentation. And if we have any questions or anything to discuss, we can do it now. Thank you so much. Yes, I think somebody said doctors. Anand Shukla. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation regarding the teaching learning method and exploring the subjects and making it more interactive rather than monotonous, the didactic lectures. So that is a wonderful presentation you have made. So there are various ways you said that asking them to frame the questions. So if someone can frame the question, he knows the answer. That is a key behind it. So that is also a wonderful thing what you have mentioned. And yes, definitely, I go with self-directed learning and ask them to, represent. That is also called as flip up or some flipping up methodology. So I think we are doing this in medical college, in my medical college, and exploring. I told you the example of the glove thermometer, and similarly for other subjects also we try to explore it. And I think very important thing is to create a kind of a interest, arouse a kind of interest in my classroom. So the every individual should pay attention to my class. So, is there any keywords or how you can go through this? That you can create importance of the subject, a particular subject, in the student's mind, and then they will start exploring because that induction is very important. Just explore. We will ask them exploring. They may become wandering parasites. They will go here and there are so many sources like Chat GPT and this and that. So I don't want that, but we want something very great interactive aspect. And first of all, we have to develop a kind of interest about the subject. So please comment on this, ma'am. Thank you, thank you. Otherwise, wonderful presentation you have made. Thank you.
Thank you. As you say, the keywords. So there are no direct keywords. So this is where the teacher's role comes. That what concept I'm going to teach. There, I have to think now. What is my keyword? How can I bring the curiosity amongst the students? First thing, your teachers. As teachers, we know our students very well. We know them well, and we know we know our concept also very well. So this is where our planning comes into the picture. That maybe as I showed you that that you can just bring an old artifact in your class. You can just show them a picture, or you can just ask a question, or it can be anything. It can be in any way. Is where our creativity comes into picture. And then when we say that the question again, that the question has to be designed very carefully, not one answer, an open-ended answer, so that there is an openness, so there is a curiosity that is arisen amongst the students. So keyword, I'm sorry, I cannot give you, because as a teacher it is something that is based on the concept we have to bring. But when you say that questioning should not become wandering, I completely agree with you. And this is where the teacher's role comes into the picture. So here, as I already mentioned, the teachers is the facilitator over there. So when I'm giving them a group task, it's not that I am just sitting and doing some work on my laptop. No. So I have to be an active participant and listener to those discussions. So if I should see that, okay, this group, if I see that they're going somewhere away from the topic, this is where I intervene, and I participate and I bring them ask back to the topic by maybe asking certain questions where I feel that, this is how I can bring them back. So this is how we can do it. So, so there are no keywords. So
Yeah,
this is
thank you. I can understand, ma'am, clearly that the situational, the only teacher's mind and teacher's brain can play a role, not the AI can play a role in this
definitely
situation.
not at all.
And we act artificially, so the teacher knows the chemistry of the class and
Yes.
what they want and what are their interests. So definitely we can go with, usually I go with some example like maybe a news or maybe some medical case, and then people start exploring it. That is how we have to go with. So there are, of course, there will be keywords. Thank you, that is a great map. Thank you very much. And the
Thank you.
classroom is a dynamic place where you'll find teaching, learning, both side. The things should takes place. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your great
Thank you
presence.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sure. Sure. Definitely. So this is the very basic thing that I brought, because it's a very deeper concept actually. Inquiry-based learning is very, very deep. So this is just very superficially. I've just tried to bring the things here so that it's easily understandable for the people who are not aware of this method. But I'm really glad to see that we have teachers here who already are applying it and who are actually interested in learning more about this. So definitely we can go deeper in the further sessions so that it becomes easier for all of us. So I'll definitely try to do that. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, thank you.